Welcome to our conservative news channel. We bring you the most up-to-date on U.S. politics, current events, and the latest happenings in America. If you're passionate about staying informed on the issues that matter most, you're in the right place. Thank you for joining us today. I'm John Carter, and this is your go-to place for all things conservative in U.S. politics. Whether it's the latest government decisions, upcoming elections, or crucial legislative updates, we've got you covered. Events, Congress, presidential speeches, protests. In today's video, we're diving into the most pressing topics in American politics. From heated debates on Capitol Hill to the impact of recent policy shifts, we'll break it all down for you so you can stay ahead of the curve.
Let's talk Iran. As you know, Iran is the world's top state sponsor of terrorism, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is their premier terrorist organization. As the State Department noted in 2019, Iran is an outlaw regime that uses terrorism as a key tool of statescraft, and the IRGC has engaged in terrorist activity or terrorism since its inception 40 years ago. And the IRG's support for terrorism, quote, is foundational and institutional. The IRGC has killed over 600 Americans in Iraq. They control vast parts of the Iranian economy, and they use them for financing terrorism. Right now, the IRGC is actively trying to murder additional Americans, including former Trump administration officials. We know from public reports that the State Department spends $2 million every month protecting former officials, including former Secretary of State Pompeo. And the Secret Service is providing similar protection to protect former National Security Advisor Bolton. Because of such activities, the Trump administration rightly designated the IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO. As you know, the FTO designation is the most powerful we have. It includes a criminal prohibition on knowingly supporting the IRGC up to life in prison. It imposes vast immigration restrictions. It allows victims, including the Gold Star families of those killed in Iran, to sue for civil damages from such support. And just as importantly, it is a signal to our allies in the Middle East and across the world that we will use our most powerful tools to counter the threats that Iran poses to them, including existential threats. The Iranian regime knows all of this, of course, which is why they have refused to re-enter a nuclear deal unless the Biden administration agrees to lift the FTO designation. According to public reports, the negotiations have stalled over this issue. To advance the talks, American negotiators and the Biden administration officials have tried to find ways to rationalize meeting Iran's demands. You yourself have downplayed concerns over such a move by saying the IRGC would remain designated under other weaker sanctions. Back in Vienna, American negotiators have also reportedly asked Iranians to make commitments to stop conducting terrorism in exchange for removing the FTO, and specifically to stop trying to murder former American officials. According to these reports, the Iranians told you no. I have to admit, it is flabbergasting that the Biden administration would take such Iranian commitments at face value, let alone consider dismantling terrorism sanctions. But I want to ask you, is it true that American negotiators made specific requests for a commitment that the IRGC will stop trying to murder former American officials, and is it true that they said no?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the details of any discussions or negotiations in a public forum. Happy to come back and talk privately about that. Let me address a few things that you've raised, because I do think that they're important. First of all, I share your views on the IRGC, and especially a number of its component parts, notably the Quds Force, which is primarily responsible for the egregious actions that it has taken in terms of targeting Americans, and, as you rightly say, continuing to do so. So we very much share that view. I agree with you. We have, over the course of this administration, of the sanctions we've issued, 86 of the 107 designations by this administration have been against the IRGC or its component parts, again, for the reasons you cite. And none of this is inconsistent with the nuclear agreement, whether it was in force or not in force. There are myriad sanctions, as you know, as you've cited, against the IRGC in one way or another, both the entity as a whole, its component parts, individual members that will remain on their books irrespective. But there are a few other factors that are worth at least considering. And I'll come to the bottom line in a moment if I can. First, when the question of designating the IRGC as a whole first came up during the Bush administration many years ago.
Mr. Secretary, as you know, we have limited time.
Well, no, but it's
so I'm going to try to focus on the specific question I asked.
So
let me start off with this. Is it true that the IRGC is actively trying to murder former senior officials of the United States?
I'm not sure what I can say in an open setting, but let me say generically that there is an ongoing threat against American officials, both present and past.
Is it true that the State Department is spending roughly $2 million a month to protect those officials?
And we are making sure, and we will make sure, for as long as it takes, that we're protecting our people, present and former, if they're under threat.
And I'm assuming you would agree that attempting to murder a Secretary of State or a former Secretary of State is a pretty damn big deal.
I would certainly agree with that. Yes.
There have been multiple public reports that we asked them to make the simple promise not to murder a former Secretary of State, and they refused. There's nothing classified about that. If they are actively refusing, saying, no, we're going to keep trying to murder your former Secretary of State, the idea that our negotiators are sitting in Vienna saying, okay, that's great, so how many more billions can we give you? That doesn't make any sense. So I just want to know the factual question. Did you ask them, stop trying to murder the former Secretary of State, and did they sit there and tell you, no, we're going to keep trying to murder him?
Of course, within the context of any engagements that we have, directly or indirectly with Iranians, one of the strong messages we send to them is they need to stop targeting our people, period. And here are the facts, as I mentioned a few minutes ago.
But did they tell you no?
Again, I'm not going to characterize what they said. They know what they would need to do to address this problem, and that's pretty straightforward. But we've seen these attacks go up 400% from 2019 to 2020. After we got out of the nuclear agreement, after we designated the IRGC, after we killed Soleimani, for whom no one is shedding any tears. Those are the facts. We have to deal with the facts in terms of what represents a threat to our people and how we can most.
Let me ask a final question, just because my time has expired.
Please.
On a topic you and I have talked a great deal about, Nord Stream 2. We've finally gotten to sanctioning Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 1 continues to deliver an enormous amount of natural gas. Stopping Nord Stream 1 would benefit our Ukrainian allies significantly. What are we doing to urge Europe to stop taking deliveries on Nord Stream 1, which in turn would benefit Ukraine substantially?
Senator, we're working across the board to help Europeans move away from dependency on Russian oil and especially on Russian gas, including gas that's coming through Nord Stream 1. I'm glad we got to where we got on Nord Stream 2. I think we went about it the right way. We did it in a way that kept the Germans fully allied with us. They made that decision, as you know, like that after the Russian invasion. That's been very, very meaningful. And we're looking across the board at steps that we can take to support them as they continue to move away from a reliance on Russian gas, wherever it's coming from, including the Nord Stream 1 pipeline.
Thank you. Senator Merkley.
Thanks.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here today. I'm going to touch on a number of issues